Good day, everyone, and welcome to one of our first episodes of Grumpy Roadie, the show dedicated to all aspects of the live audiovisual industry with no filter or political correctness. Anything goes except for racist hate speech. You can swear, make fun of each other or things, as long as we're still acting with respect towards one another. That's all that really matters. My name is Steve Klinck, and I've been in the AV industry for the past 20 years in one capacity or another. Currently, I'm a project manager in Toronto for CCR Solutions, who, like many of you, is laid off until further notice due to the current situation with COVID-19. Apologies for any interruptions from my cats or the fact that I'm not wearing any pants. So today's show is about COVID-19 and how it's affected everyone in the industry currently and what this will mean for our future. We'll be exploring many areas today in today's segment. Before we get started, though, let's introduce our guests on the show today. So our first guest is Kevin Stay from Toronto, who I've had the pleasure of working with in the first decade of my time here in the industry. Kevin is currently with Stage Vision as a senior video tech, but maybe he can better describe what he does there. Hey, how you doing, Kevin?
I would say I do what I'm told. That's basically my job. It's I do audio, video, basically came out as a camera and video editor. Yeah, basically I can do whatever you need. Terrible at lighting.
Yeah, there's a particular story that comes to mind when I think about that, actually. Well, we might talk about that later. Anyways, moving on. Our other guest is Will Marthe, who's a freelance tech out of Southern California. We wanted to get an American perspective on this as well. So I've worked with Will the past 2 to 3 years, doing some shows out in California. Welcome, Will. How are you doing today?
I'm fine, thank you.
Hey, did I pronounce your last name right there, Will? I always forget.
Marthe, Marth. I've heard it all. It's usually pronounced Marthe, but yeah.
You also respond to "Hey, you" and "that guy" and "you in the black."
Yeah, hey, you in the black. Hey, tall dude.
Yep,
that's me.
Okay, awesome. All right, well, let's get into it then. In the meantime, because we are missing a couple guests currently, but we'll see if they end up joining on the call afterwards. So the first topic of discussion is what's been the overall experience as far as applying for government assistance, both here and in the U.S. From my experience so far, unemployment's been pretty easy to get from the Canadian government, and also the $2,000 payment that you get at the beginning of the month. What has been the experience so far for both, well, actually for you, Kevin?
Mine, I was actually surprised. It was layoff came first week available. Was it the 12th or 13th of March? Don't remember. Applied the Monday, and I guess it was a week ago today, it came through. I didn't hear anything from them. I didn't get any kind of actual confirmation that it basically had even been received, but it came in easy enough. It was nothing to it. Nice and easy. It was 2,000 even. Same as the CERB, but I don't believe on the EI we have to go back in and apply every 4 weeks. Is that something I just heard today?
Yeah, no, I can't say that myself that I've looked into that completely, but I know that when I applied for unemployment insurance, that basically I was automatically submitted for this other payment that we're talking about here for our U.S. listeners that may not have this apply to them. So basically we get like about around $500 a week or so. That's kind of what the maximum is by the time the taxes take off. And then we're getting a lump sum at the beginning of every month of about $2,000. So not really sure as far as what's going on with that, as far as whether you need to resubmit as far as applying for that. But I guess we'll have to see how it kind of turns out. All I know is that the fact that it's been as easy as it is has been shocking to say the least.
Yes, there was really nothing to it. There was no other phone calls, there was no other emails. It just happened. It was pretty cool, actually.
Yeah, no, indeed. So now to turn to the American perspective, Will, what's been your experience as far as dealing with the government in California there, as far as any sort of government assistance?
So far, they have yet to dole out any assistance to me personally. I'm supposed to get a $1,200 stimulus check from the government.
Wow.
But
that's
they
crazy.
haven't. Basically, when the IRS gets around to it, they'll get it to you, but you have to wait until they do. So they just sent out the first wave of stimulus checks. It should be $1,200, and some people get more, some people get less based on your yearly income. And then as far as freelancer or contractor assistance, that's not going to come in from the state until the end of this month or middle of next.
Wow. So let me ask you this: how has that impacted how you live day to day, as far as having to keep up with payments and stuff like that?
Well, for me personally, since I like to keep expenses low and have had a good season, it hasn't really affected me at all yet. But in the coming months, say midsummer, it will start to affect me. But otherwise, I'm still good. But when you work in this business, it's feast or famine. You get used to it. So when you have a lot of work, you save up. When you don't, you do the same.
Wow. Okay, that's interesting. And as far as the process of actually applying for assistance and stuff like that, is it? I would take it it's mostly all web based, just like what we have here in Canada. How difficult has it been to actually get the forms in for your formal application?
And that's the problem right there, is that for the general contractor or freelancers assistance, we haven't been able to do that yet because the websites haven't been set up yet, because that's being done at the state level.
Right, and I know that's something that we're hearing a lot in the news, as far as what the president is saying, as far as what happens for the country, and the fact that really the majority of the decisions are really happening on a local level with the governors from each state, which I know can be slightly confusing as far as how the information comes out. And it's not quite that way here in Canada, even though things are different kind of between provinces, different provinces. But that being said, a lot of the initiatives for assistance has come at a federal level, as far as how everyone's been involved with it. Now, it still sounds like it'll be federal on the American side too, but it just sounds like, unfortunately, a lot tougher process to get it going, because you just have so many more people for population.
Exactly. Yeah, but
Yeah.
the stimulus checks will come straight from the federal government. But the unemployment assistance, as far as freelancers or general contractors go, that'll come from the state.
Wow. That's that seems like it's a very confusing process in general, to have to go to two different sources to get, you know,
It is.
your
Yeah.
assistance. That's wow. That's okay. Well, that's good to know. And that's exactly where we got Will on the call here, ladies and gentlemen, just, to give us a perspective here, because you know, the headlines can only say so much, but having somebody that works in this industry that has personal experience, I think is invaluable. Moving on. Now, this won't apply to Will since he's a freelancer, but Kevin, let me ask you this. Is your current employer still providing health benefits while you're laid off?
I believe so. That's a good one. See, honestly, I haven't checked. I really have no idea.
Okay, I can speak for myself that I know that my company is, but that being said, it hasn't impacted me a lot, because luckily I'm married to somebody that has a better benefits package than myself.
True
So,
that.
but I do know that currently we still are covered. But I mean, everything that keeps dropping off, as far as assistance from companies and stuff like that, when there's no income coming in,
Mhm.
it would not surprise me at some point if that does get dropped.
Yeah, no, I believe. I imagine that we still do, Steve, because I think we're still. We're basically the layoff has been flagged to June 12th or 13th for the time being now. So I imagine everything is still pretty normal until then, and then we'll see what happens. Now, I don't expect to see anything happen again before September. I really don't. As it is
Yeah,
now.
and that's something we're going to get into as well a little bit later on in the show, as far as where we see the recovery going, as far as for the industry. But let's just move on at this point. And so, a question for you guys right now is: in your experience, do you know anyone at this point that's actually still employed and doing shifts at any AV companies?
I can think of one guy, and it's because he runs his own webcast service.
Okay,
And
all right.
he, as far as I know, is the only one doing anything. And he's doing a lot, because that's all that anyone's doing. It's Zoom here is getting should have bought stock 2 months ago. Just putting that out there.
Yeah, no doubt. Certainly, the advent of online platforms has certainly changed things as far as for our industry, and I think we're going to see some long-lasting effects from that, unfortunately. But one of the things I did see, which I thought was kind of interesting, and somebody posted on social media somewhere, was someone had set up like Octanorm set panels and using them as dividers for like temporary hospitals and arenas and stuff like that. So I thought that was a really neat use of things. And the other thing that I've heard of as well is some school boards trying to get devices into the hands of some students that are learning online that don't currently have devices, as far as trying to make sure that they can continue with their online education, which that is a massive black hole to go into in itself.
Yeah.
But that's pretty much the only thing that I've heard of. What about yourself, Will? I know you're friends with a lot of freelancers and techs in the Southern California area. Do you know of anyone who's working right now in your area?
I know of nobody, at least none of my immediate contacts I know that are working.
Wow. So, and
Yeah, it's pretty dismal.
yeah, no doubt. And Kevin brought up the point too about we received these notices saying that we'd be going back as early as maybe June. But I think you're absolutely right, Kev. There's no way that we'd be going back at that time.
I really can't imagine. And to do what? There'd be no way that you could talk a financial advisor to sit shoulder to shoulder in a overcrowded ballroom right now. That's just
exactly
not going to happen.
Exactly.
Yeah. It'd be lucky a year from now if they'll do that.
Yeah. So at this point, as far as I can tell, the only people that I know that are really working at any of the companies that we've worked at before now is basically people that are trying to drive sales and maybe some operational people.
Mm-hmm.
Does that track with the rest of you guys as far as who else happens to be still working at these companies?
Pretty much.
Yep. Okay. All right. Okay. So now we're going to go on to the next topic, which it's unfortunate that we don't have our one guest, Matt, on the show as of yet. So our next topic really is a question of maximum risk of exposure to the virus versus working a minimum wage job. Is it worth it? So I want to hear from Will on this first. Will, you're definitely the person that would be in the most vulnerable situation, shall we say, at the moment. What are your thoughts on that, and how do you wage a decision like that for you?
Well, for me, generally, when it comes to being sick or getting sick or the possibility thereof, it's just I don't care if it's going to happen. It's going to happen. Just go forth and do your thing, and let what come will come.
Okay. So now that being said, like, does it concern you at all for the fact, I don't know if you happen to subscribe to Obamacare or anything like that, but should you get, infected or anything like that, you would probably end up having to pay a substantial sum for your hospital bill. And then of course, not having any income to support that. What are your thoughts on that?
If it turns out that I have to go to the hospital, I'm pretty much screwed. Although I have heard that costs for treating coronavirus will be subsidized, if not entirely substituted.
Wow. Okay. Well, that's I think that's an encouraging sign, if anything, for the country as a whole, if that is in fact the case. I think that personally, this could be a really great step towards socialized healthcare for America. That seems to be something that the country has struggled with for a very, very long time. So what about for yourself, Kevin? I know that we just discussed that you've gotten your government assistance and everything else, but what are your thoughts? Is it worth it?
Well, it depends what you're doing. Again, if you're helping the public good, like I've been considering helping out of the grocery store over here. Myself, I really don't care what happens to me. I never have. I have no one, nothing to, like, I'm not looking after kids or pets. That turtle's going to live forever, so that doesn't matter. But if I get it, same as with what Will said, just to mirror that, if I get it, I get it. And if I get through it, great, then I'm immune. Fantastic. Saves me a booster shot later. But for the most part, I'd take the risk just to, sadly, right now, just to do anything. Sitting around,
Wow.
None of us are built for that. I'm really figuring that out. Any of us that have done this industry for long enough, this is killing me.
Yeah, no, I can speak to that too personally. When I took some time off, about a year and a half ago, the whole thing of not having anything to specifically do or anything like that, it really throws you through for a loop. That's for sure. And you're right. I mean, all of us that have been doing this for the many years that we've been doing it, we're used to basically getting through the next, getting through the job that you're on to get to the next one, and it just keeps going that way.
Yeah, survive the one, go on to the next. That's pretty well it. Actually, I'm think that something you said, Will, something that is absolutely not in the news here is potentially the fact that your stay or time at the hospital would be government subsidized. I haven't heard anything about that up
Yeah, I thought that was very interesting too.
here. That is
So,
interesting.
yeah. Well, like I said, if that is in case the fact, if that is the fact, then I think that's a really positive step.
Yeah.
For as a whole. It's just unfortunate that it seems, in my personal opinion, anyways, it seems that there's no unifying force, so to speak, within the U.S. As far as how things are done from state to state, and that's not really a comment on the federal government or anything like that, or who happens to be in power. But I think those divides have been there for a very, very long time. And when you're dealing with a country as big as that, with the population that you have, I think that is a very tall order at the very least to be able to think of something like that. But one sign of cooperation that I've read in the news lately that I thought was really great to see was that state governors are starting to talk with each other as far as the idea of reopening up states for business and such like that, as far as what they do when they actually decide to reopen everything up, that it won't just be an individual decision, but it'll be a decision that will be made with multiple people involved as far as at the state levels and from different states, since there are an awful lot of borders that are shared, especially when you look at a state like California. There's at least about 4 borders shared there or something like that. So, let alone many other factors. So I thought that was encouraging. So, okay. Now, next thing that we got here is just want to see, what are your reactions to those rumors going around at this point that we're not really going to have a live event industry until about the fall of 2021. We're not even talking AV meetings. We're talking concerts, anyone being able to attend a sporting event or anything like that. Wow, what do you guys do with that, and how do you process that? Do you think it's bullshit? Do you think it's true? What do you guys think?
Well, okay, I got to chime in on this one because I was just reading a press release from Microsoft that they've moved all of their events to online until the fall of 21. So Microsoft will not be holding any kind of live events in person until at least the fall of next year.
Yeah, I saw that one as well.
And so if Microsoft are going to be doing it, a whole bunch of other corporations are going to be hopping on that bandwagon and basically setting the same kind of time frame. Because nobody wants to be the one to come out first, and nobody's going to get insurance for that event. That's the bigger thing, because what's really going to be holding it back at the end of the day is the insurance company. No insurance company is going to issue an insurance for an event unless they're absolutely sure that it's safe. Because can you imagine the liability costs if some CEO or some superstar gets sick, some artist, some politician?
Take out your whole board of directors in one session. Oh yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
What insurance company is going to take that risk?
Very, very true. And ladies and gentlemen, sorry I didn't introduce him earlier, but that's our producer, Chris Mills, that's talking right now. So, very good points there, Chris, as far as that's concerned. I got to say it's highly discouraging. That's for sure. And I'm sure one of the things that some of you have considered as well is, what the fuck do I do now? Do I stick with it and hope that I can come back to this type of career, or do I look into something else that maybe I got to get into a different industry to be able to support myself?
Yeah. Well, the problem with getting into different industries, from what I can tell, is not that we don't have any transferable skills. The problem is we don't have any cross-sellable skills. Like, what we do is not something that fits in the checkbox on a job application or in a certain roster. So we basically don't look like we qualify for jobs that we're actually overqualified for in reality.
Well, it's kind of funny. So, I'm sure that Kevin and Chris can talk to this, but we get automatic emails from our government as far as job placements. And one of the things that we end up getting a lot is, like, for what I listed as being a project manager, all the listings I'm getting are for like office assistants, which is really, really odd. But at the same time, it's like, yeah, okay, I know Microsoft Office and such, but when you think about that, you're just like, yeah, that doesn't really fit as far as what we really do. But only because what we do is just so goddamn odd to begin with.
Yeah, it's like I get job application as a videographer, you know. What am I going to do? Shoot weddings? Sure, I can do that, but that is not what I do, you know.
Yeah, no kidding.
I've
And
got
even
every day I do a brand new listing every morning of dietary aid and what was the other one? Residential healthcare is what all the job listings I keep getting are like.
Yeah, I mean, I put up LED walls at weddings. You know what I mean? Not a problem.
Well, once again, I mean, we're hearing of a lot of people having weddings and such in their backyards with only really their immediate family because of not being able to have so many people all together at once. And so, like, honestly, the one thing I won't miss is having to put up with a fucking wedding DJ. I can tell you that much. As far as any DJ for that matter. Sorry guys, but you can all fuck off and die as far as I'm concerned. So you know, that's from one audio guy to
the corporate top 40 bands can go right with them.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, sometimes they can be fun, unless they think that, you know, they are the second coming of Van Halen or something like that.
Yeah, they're not going to be playing the corporate circuit. I'm with Chris on that one. That's
not for a while, because there are not going to be any CEO wives that are drinking as much to make their husband keep signing checks so the band keeps playing, you know.
Yeah, very true, very true. So, guys, let me ask you another question here, and that is, we already kind of are seeing how online meetings are going to shape the event industry kind of as a whole, as far as where we're going with things. But one thing that I'm wondering about when we open everything back up is cross rentals. And so, I mean, it's a way of life in our industry that we get equipment from other places when we can't supply it ourselves, or if there's a specialty request from a client, or whatever the case. But in terms of sanitation, now this was brought up with our friend Matt Cohen that actually happened to mention this, and we were talking about translation headsets and the fact that the little dirty secret in the industry is that, you know, 9 times out of 10, it's not really disinfected and it's just put back in the bag, and you don't know any different.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, you know, this goes now obviously to anything that, you know, the presenter might actually have to handle, like a microphone or a perfect cue remote or a laser pointer or any of that kind of stuff. So I'm interested to know from you guys, who do you think it falls on as far as the responsibility for sanitation of that, as far as that equipment? So say it's delivered to your to your job site. Is it the responsibility of the provider who gave that to us in the first place to have it sanitized, or is it our responsibility, since we are the last in line, to make sure that's sanitized before it hits the client's hands?
I would say that would have to be part of the supplier QC pretty well. Like you'd have, in our case, we have people at the shop. You would hope that if that becomes policy to come in and alcohol wipe all the equipment when it comes in, which it should have been happening historically, now that you look back on it.
Yeah.
I would like to think that would be part of the QC of the equipment that you're getting, I would hope. The idea of having to do it on site, I completely get that it's a good safety net. It's a good second measure. It's a good way to make sure. But in the cross-rental line, I'd have to say you'd hope it would come done.
I'd have to agree with Kevin. That should be part of the standard intake procedure for any kind of equipment coming into a shop at this point going forward. And it should be best practice to do it on site if possible. Additionally, like before you return something, you know, it should just be good procedure to clean it before you return it. But it definitely should be mandatory on intake for the company to clean everything, just for the safety of their own personnel and staff, right?
No, I completely agree. Will, have you got any thoughts on that?
Yes, I would say that falls on both the leasee and the leaser pretty much. They have to clean it before they give it to you, of course, but then when you're swapping headsets from person to person to person, say when you're running the breakout theater or room or whatever, it's you need to clean it off between each person using it.
That's a really good point, and that was something I wanted to talk about as far as multiple users within a day. Sometimes you've got a coffee break or a lunch break that you can do those things. Often, as we know in this industry, when things run late, the first thing to go is how long those coffee breaks or lunch breaks are, so that we get ourselves into a position that, what was supposed to be an hour is now all of a sudden 20 minutes.
Well,
So
start hiring telephone sanitizer. Douglas Adams knew it was coming,
well, I think there might be a good case for for what Will just mentioned, for justifying the position of like an A2 for anyone that is actually running audio systems specifically for that. Also for having backup slide advancers and such. But the thing with the slide advancers is a really tricky one too, because now you're going from person to person to person, and you say you've got about 4 presentations or something like that before you hit a break.
Yeah.
How are you going to get around that when the standard has been for years that when you're done with that remote, you leave it on the podium and you hope that the next person picks it up?
A gesture wave sensor in the podium, contact free. Or they all get a magnetic ring and there'll be a read hall sensor in the podium that they just wave their hand over to advance to the next slide.
But could you possibly think, guys, that this might actually increase the need, say, for teleprompt as a result?
Ooh, it's a definite solution. Honestly, before this moment, I hadn't thought about the presenter to presenter transfer for sure. That had never crossed my mind. I just, waterproof the remote and just dump it in a bucket of alcohol and then go pick it out of there and then off you go. But no, a teleprompt, that's a good idea. So just lose the whole queuing thing outright. That would be a solution.
Many presenters, that'll stick to a script, that's fine, but plenty of them don't.
Many of them don't.
They're the off-the-cuff style or the interactive style. They're not.
I agree.
Go for that.
So what do you think as far are we really going to end up going back to the days of next slide, please? Hearing that from the stage, every single time. So, if we can't find a feasible workaround for this.
Multiple remotes, and each person gets a remote.
Wow. That in itself is certainly, I like the idea. However, the execution of that could be very interesting.
That you can hand them off as they come off stage while another one is being used, and you have time to disinfect that in the off, and then that's disinfected one to the next person going on the stage.
Yeah, because that can go into the A2 gig. If they're basically side stage, they just escort off and come straight to me. That's a salute. There are some situations where that won't happen. You get like a panel. They're just going to go stay on the stage. They're not going to come off. But that is an option. That's not bad.
Yeah, and if you do have a panel, they're all going to be sitting in their seats, for example. Then you can give them a fixed mounted button.
Mm-hmm.
Or you have a foot operated pedal at the lectern. Behind the lectern, they just step on it for the next slide. If they're going to be stuck on the reading from their notes on the lectern, for example.
I kind of like that idea as far as a foot pedal of some sort. That's interesting. Kind of like
in any keyboard supply, you can get these pedals for like a couple of bucks, so they're widely available. Easy.
Interesting.
It'd be easy enough to wire up, to advance, to wire that into a perfect Q system, so you have both options.
It kind of reminds me of when somebody is a mute or something like that, and they could like stomp 1 for yes and stomp 2 for go back.
Very
something like that. That's kind of messed up, but I think we lost Will here for some reason. I'm not sure why.
Yeah, the other option is handing out a whole bunch of dummy remotes, and we do it like we do so often, just watch the presenter's thumb and manually advance them.
Yeah.
We've all done that.
Triggers the light, or back in the day, it makes the slide projector at your feet clunk, and then you advance the slide. Yeah.
Yep, I've got you. Okay. Well, hey, one question I wanted to, two things I wanted to do before we kind of wrap things up. It looks like we lost Will. Unfortunately, I guess someone in his apartment building decided that now is a good time to reset the router. Yeah. Thanks to the building operations there in Will's building. You guys are a bunch of pricks. Because I know that Will would have really enjoyed these next couple of questions here. So since you guys have been in isolation, let me ask you this. Have you tried or come up with any new hobbies since you've had the time to do it?
Oh my God, no, I'm alarmingly lazy. I had enough hobbies to start with. Now I just can't do most of them because I'm trapped inside. Yeah, no,
Right.
I haven't done anything new. I should be doing cartoons or whatever else. Instead, I've come up with this crazy 10-kilometer walk circuit I do in an industrial park. So there's no one out there. There's the occasional cyclist, shitload of dump trucks, but I don't think I can, infect them. So I should be fine with that. But yeah, no, I haven't done. God, I haven't done anything.
So you're really living the Mad Max existence then at this point.
Kind of am, although I always was really. Like I could have taught a course on self-isolation. I've just this has been what I've done for
Me too. It's
ever.
like if I'm not on the road or on a show, I'm sitting at home.
Pretty much.
Exactly.
Yeah, stoked to not be on a show or on the road. Yeah.
It's like,
so in a Mad Max world, let me ask you this, guys. Are you the driver or are you the marauder that's strapped to the front of the hood?
I think
I'm the V8 engine under the hood.
I know that we're getting a little bit off topic here, but well, what can I say? And my last question for you guys before we wrap this up is, in your very limited interaction since you've been outside to do things, have you seen anything that you're just like, wow, I've never seen that before done this way because of the situation that we're in? Have you seen anything new like that? You were just like, what was that? Or that was kind of cool, or wow, that is really fucked.
I've had a few. The first day, so say this, all the shit at the fan, let's call it on a Friday. The Monday at the grocery store, I had two young lads in a beat to piss Dodge Caravan, flat black, drive up. I stepped out of the car, took 2 steps. I've been outside in the pandemic for a total of 14 seconds at this point. And two young guys roll up in a ready for the wasteland van and ask me, hey, this is a weird question, but do you want to buy a big ass TV? Right out of the gate. It's like, you guys are already breaking into the summer homes and stealing shit already. We're day one of this thing.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that, and later on that week, what's that?
Did they at least know the specs on the TV? Would have been.
They didn't. They couldn't tell me a thing. Didn't tell me a thing. Just a big ass TV. That's all I had to go by. And there were two of them and one of me. I was not willing to go around to the back of the van to inspect it.
Yeah.
But it was later on in the week. It was southern Mississauga down here in Clarkson, and went out for one of my crazy walks before I figured to go over to the no man's land. And everyone I met on the path, we all kept our distance. You could swing a hockey stick and not hit each other. Every single person looked you in the eye and said hello. That has never happened in this part of the province in my life before.
Yeah, it has changed a little bit, even just on the walks that I've been taking and stuff. That maybe it's just that we're missing people, just period. That the fact that someone says hello to you while you're walking and you say it back is certainly something that's been missing from Ontario for a very long time.
Well, I mean,
in the GTA.
Population density too, right? If you encounter that many people, you kind of you numb off, and because you're not going to say hello 25,000 times a day when you're walking downtown Toronto.
True.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely.
So basically that kind of recedes into the back of your mind, that tradition. But when you have very few people, that suddenly resurfaces again, because then they're not just a mass, but you see them as individuals.
So, Chris, what's your response to maybe one of the weirdest things you've seen since the lockdown?
Well, I mean, besides people, standing in line outside, like spaced out, going 3 times around the block because they're standing 2 meters apart or something like that. Otherwise, nothing really that strange. The only thing I noticed was my response to something had changed. Like the other day, this drunk guy came walking down this alleyway when I was walking the dog. And he was just stumbling down the alleyway, being all happy. And he stumbled towards me and wanted to give me a hug. you know, and I kind of
Okay.
like backed off, you know, kind of moved out his way, and he immediately got offended and aggressive, you know, going like, "Hey, dude, what's wrong with you and everybody with this fucking COVID, blah blah," you know, and like, and literally, you know, came running after me and tried to force a hug on me, basically.
So you're basically running the dog at that point, and he's yelling, "Let me hug you."
Well, to be fair, I let the dog pull me at the speed the dog wanted to go anyway. I just kind of met his pace at that point.
That
Wow.
is a weird assault. I haven't heard a story like that. That's a good one.
Huh.
Yeah, you know, normally you wouldn't respond like that. You know, you just kind of put an arm around the guy's shoulders. Like, yeah, buddy, hey, nice, you're so happy. Have a good one, and walk on. And that would have been the end of it.
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
Interesting.
But just
Well,
like the new social conventions and definitions of personal space change, like even weird interactions like that profoundly.
Yeah, I gotta say, like I went up to visit my parents a couple weeks ago. I didn't actually go inside their house or anything like that. I basically went to Tim Hortons. Stop pointing your finger. All right, so here's what I did. I brought myself a camping chair. Had myself, you know, a Tim Hortons coffee. I went there and I picked up a bunch of donuts and some coffee and stuff like that, and basically rang the doorbell and then walked to my chair that was about, I'd say a good 15 feet away from the front door, and they saw all this stuff here, you know, like on the ground. I was also delivering some paper towels and toilet paper and stuff like that, and they're like, "Why don't you come in?" I'm like, "No. How many times do we have to talk about this?" Now, that being said, my parents are a bit older, and so they tend to forget things and everything. So, needless to say, this whole situation is a little bit trying for them. But we ended up having a half decent afternoon for that, and it just looked really, really odd for the fact that I was, you know, sitting a good 6 feet away from everybody, but they were all out on the front stoop. One of the neighbors actually said, "He's like, are we living in America now? You know, like, should there be like a 2-4 on the front yard too, and and a shotgun?" It's like, well, take it easy there, you know, like that. I don't think we need to go that far. But
with the shotgun across the lap.
yeah, exactly. But two things I found that were very strange that I've experienced. One, I was grocery shopping, and all of a sudden I found myself saying at the very end of the checkout, I said to the person, "Thank you so much for your service." It's like, why did I just say it like that? Like you've just, served in the military. That was really, really odd.
It's interesting because the psychological implication there is, that because they are basically putting their life on the line.
Yeah, and they absolutely are. They absolutely are, and it's just funny though, because that's something once again, you would expect. Like, I don't even think we say that to our own military personnel here in Canada, which we obviously should do that more often, but it's not said out publicly as much.
Around what's the name? Around November 11th.
Yeah, Remembrance Day. Yeah. Sure, but as far as an everyday occurrence, that is something that you even see more in like airports and such, especially down in the U.S., where you see a lot more military personnel coming in and out of airports. You see that in certain parts of Canada too, especially like Edmonton.
I was going to say in areas, where there's more military presence, it probably is more prevalent. Like, how often do we see soldiers here in Toronto?
Almost never.
Yeah,
and
maybe occasionally one who's on his way home from service or whatever, who's on his leave.
Yep, absolutely. And my last experience, which I'll tell you about, I went through a drive-through the other day, and I went to pay, and someone had come up with the ingenious idea that they had basically e-taped the Interact machine to the end of a hockey stick blade, and then shoved that out of the actual window for me to tap.
That has milk written all over it. Just does.
Well, but the funny part about it is that they hadn't taken the time to cut the hockey stick down or anything like that. So they're still using the entire stick to be able to try and
you got practice after the.
That's true. You can't fuck up a stick, man. Come on. They're
it's pretty funny though, because like this guy's in a really, really small space where he's pouring drinks and trying to get stuff out, and yet he's trying to wrangle this hockey stick that's a good like 4 feet, 5 feet long just to
No.
get, like a couple of feet outside of the window to be able to free to tap your card. And I just thought, wow, that's something.
Actually for that, I got a random fact of the day for you. Did you know that the first toy Nintendo built to break through and become an actual toy company was a telescopic gorilla arm that had kind of like the scissor mechanism with like a gorilla claw at the end?
What are those grab claw things?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, basically like those telescopic grab claw things, right? That was the first toy that Nintendo made, and that broke them into the market.
Hey,
Those
Chris,
come in really handy in those scenarios right there.
I've been told that Matt Cohen is actually in the waiting room right now here on the show. Can you take a look for us and see if you can have him join?
Let's see if I can get it in the waiting room here. Oh yeah, sure. Admit all. There we go.
See, that's the key. Oh, and look, looks like Will has actually come back. So I wasn't aware of that. So
Oh, now everybody's back.
oh, and hey, we can actually see Will now too. That's awesome. So
Hey, how you doing, guys?
Hey, that's great. Hey, Matt, how you doing?
Excellent.
Excellent. Okay. Well, hey.
Audio up a bit. You're a little low. Oh, your audio's muted still.
Oh, that's for Will. Yeah, Will is his.
But I can still hardly hear him.
Oh, you can't hear me?
Yeah.
I can hear you, Matt.
Now,
Yeah,
now
we can
you're
hear
better,
you.
yeah.
Okay, so like Kevin, you're more than welcome to stay on and listen through kind of the same questions I'm going to ask Matt. And I'm just going to ask those other questions for Will since he wasn't able to join us, and Matt can chime in too. If you do have to go though, we completely understand. It's
No,
completely
I'll
up to
stick
you.
around. This is better than television for sure. So carry on.
Okay, well, we lost Will just a little bit before we were just about to wrap up. So Will, one of the things that I asked these guys about is since you've been in isolation, have you tried or picked up any new hobbies at this point? Your mic's muted.
You got to unmute. You got to unmute him there, Steve.
Oh, we got him now.
There you go.
There we go. Mic check.
Yeah, we hear you, Will.
Sweet.
Any new hobbies that you picked up?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I'm picking up some new network engineering certs, and I'm just learning how to use the Microsoft Office suite much better. So PowerPoint and Excel. I'm doing some Visual Basic coding. I'm also learning how to do better dashboards for Microsoft Excel, and just doing skill building overall. So that's been my hobby generally over the past month since I've seen you. And then, yeah, just training, working out, so this whole downtime, I'm just using it as a time for self-improvement.
Wow, that's fantastic. How about yourself there, Matt?
I mean, training wise, I've been working on skills that are not specifically industry related. I also work on things like motorcycles and cars, and so I've been doing more of that because it's something I happen to enjoy. At the same time, I've also gone and got things like my Smart Serve, because why not? It's free. Because let's face it, we can always serve a drink and make some money doing it that way. I haven't really reached, honestly, I know there's all these free courses, and I even saw like Disney was doing it like a free Imagineering course and all sorts of stuff. I just haven't reached into it, and I think it's because I'm finding it hard because it's a little depressing, to be honest. It's like learning skills that I don't plan to use anytime soon, and the number of times I've trained people to use things like lighting consoles, and then they don't have a show for 2 months on a lighting console. They forget everything, and so I'm also afraid of learning this stuff, having the certificate that says I know it, but I have no clue what I'm doing.
For my own experience, as far as having to teach people, like I've done many times throughout my time at CCR, yes, I can completely see that too, where you teach somebody something and then 3 months later they finally get a chance and they've only retained a very small part of it, even if they have the cliff notes and stuff like that to get through it. Certainly, yeah, repetition is the key with anything that is brand new for learning. So one thing that I asked the guys here too, which I think Will had already been cut out at this point. At this point, since you kind of bring it up, Matt, as far as new skills and stuff like that, say the industry doesn't recover until fall 2021, which is something that we have heard an awful lot
Ooh,
of.
I hope not.
I hope not either, my friend. But and I wholeheartedly think that Canada will probably recover much more in the live industry and much faster due to the smaller amount of population versus our friends down in the U.S. But that being said, if you had to and had to go into a different line of work, what would your thoughts be on that? Is there anything that comes to mind that you would do instead?
That's to me.
Yeah, that's to you.
Oh, I mean, yeah. I mean, I think if I was to go into something else, I think at this point, like I looked into. It's funny because I looked into actually getting my electrical ticket, and becoming a full-fledged electrician, and working on a trade side. But my understanding is you have to do the apprenticeship stuff, and nobody's taking apprentices because of the current issue.
Yep.
And then, so I've looked at that. I've looked at becoming actually a full-fledged motorcycle mechanic because riding bikes is something I love doing. Also a trade, also an apprenticeship thing. Nobody's taking.
Also an essential service right now too.
Yes, this is the thing too. Is it's also essential service. Now you don't have to be a tradesman, a registered tradesman, to work on a car or a motorcycle. Obviously, that's how you work for a dealership or that kind of thing. So I'm kind of looking at doing something like that. I've looked at building online stores. I've looked at moving into networking potentially. To be honest, I've actually looked at building streaming kits and how I can provide people, like right now, for example, I'm talking on a decent mic and I have some lighting and I have a decent camera, as much as this virtual background crap doesn't work well on Zoom.
Yeah,
you know,
gotta
at
get
least
the actual green screen there, Matt, for that.
I know. But it's better than the craft wall that's behind me. You know, at least there's something here. At least there's
I
something
like your backdrop, actually. I do.
Yeah,
That's
too,
'cause
I have to say.
that's-
The crappy keying is driving my OCD mental right now, but
Well, Chris, that's
but I
because Chris, you
appreciate-
worked
I
on that.
appreciate the effort, though, my friend.
That's right. Well, Chris and I both worked on that gig, so
Yeah, exactly. I have a whole bunch of mememories of that stage.
Now, just to get this out of the way, since Matt, you weren't here at the beginning of the show, everybody, Matt Cohen is a guy that I've worked with for about the past 5 to 6 years or so.
yeah,
in the
something like that.
industry. And he's now a freelance lighting director, amongst many other things. It's funny that you bring up networking, since our other guest here on the line, Will Marte, has a lot of experience as far as doing that. Will, what are your thoughts as far as if you had to get out of the industry, what you would either go back to or pick up as a new profession in the meantime until things recover?
I'd probably go back to doing some corporate IT work. So just corporate on-site headquarters or just help desk, something like that, just to get me through until the industry picks up again.
Yeah.
Help desk? Are you serious?
Yeah, you got to start up. Well, when you get in there, you have to start from the bottom anyways. It doesn't matter how experienced or educated you are.
Well, yeah, the other thing is too is that we all get to a point, and this was something that Matt you missed, unfortunately, but we were talking about government assistance and that it's been a fairly positive experience here in Canada. But Will was mentioning too that currently at this point there's been absolutely no funds in the state of California that have been actually given out to anybody in the industry at this point.
Yeah, I don't know about our industry, but I know I was listening today and they were talking about having that the US subsidy, basically our version or their version of CERB, works out to $17 a day. Now I don't know about you, but I can't survive on $17 a day. Even if I did dick all and sat here and did nothing, I can't survive on $17 a day. So
no,
before or after paying rent?
No, it's 17. Oh, like myself?
Well, the $17 is that before or after rent?
No, before.
Right.
Yeah. That doesn't even take into consideration rent payments or utilities.
Yeah, exactly. They're talking
cover this place.
Yeah, or food for that matter.
They're talking $1,200 for 2 months down there. Whereas we're looking at as of today, as of this conversation, the date that when we're having this conversation, we can now make $1,000 a month and still get a $2,000 benefit a month.
Yeah, no, that's What was your experience, Matt, as far as applying for unemployment insurance and the 2,000 lump sum? Was it fairly easy for you as a freelancer?
Yeah. So as a freelancer, man, there was 75 different places to get information. Everybody had an opinion. And until you actually talk to the CRA and click through the buttons, that's when you get your answers. And even still, none of us are going to have the answers until next year at tax time, what this all actually means to any of us. But in terms of the application process, like I logged in, I clicked 3 buttons, and I was done. And I was flabbergasted. It was actually so easy, it could have been a scam. It was that easy.
Well,
So,
in comparison now, as I see Will there smiling, he was mentioning to us that he has to get it from 2 different sources. So there's assistance on the state level and there's assistance at the federal level. So it's not just going through one service like we do in Canada to be able to get our funds. He has to go through 2 different application processes to even get close to being able to. We're not even talking about the $17 a day.
ouch.
Just for the fact that it's anything at all. So in which Will, remind us again, you mentioned that won't even start until, was it the beginning of May?
The freelancers assistance or the stimulus checks?
Either.
So the federal stimulus checks, the first wave just went out.
It did.
And so if you filed a tax return in the tax years 2018, 2019 and have automatic deposit, most of you should have already gotten your deposits.
So here's the difference up here. So in order to get your CERB, you had to log into the online system. So you had to have a CRA online account. Now, if you filed taxes anytime in the last 10 years, you probably had a CRA online account. You may not know you had one, but you had one. For someone like myself, my parents many moons ago set up that account for me. I didn't even know what the login is, and to be honest, as a shitty freelancer, I haven't done my taxes in 2 years. So
and just to clarify here things too for Will, CRA means Canada Revenue Agency, which is kind of the version of the IRS up in Canada. So that's what Matt is referring to.
Yeah. So so what we had to do is we had to log into that. Once you logged in, you then clicked 3 buttons and you were done, and you got your either a check sent or a direct deposit done. The unfortunate part was I did talk to a number of freelancers who called me in a panic because they noticed that because I posted things online as I was trying to figure out my process, and I had a couple of freelancers call me in a panic saying, "Hey, what do I do? How can I apply?" And I walked them through the steps, and I said, "Look, do you have a CRA account?" And this is where people were in trouble. Did you have a CRA account or a Canadian Revenue Agency account? If they said no, I was like, okay, first of all, make sure you don't. Call them. They will confirm you don't. If you don't, you have to register. And they're like, great, how do I register? Well, you register by having done your taxes in the last 2 years. If you hadn't done your taxes in the last 2 years, there was no way to register, period, full stop, with the CRA.
Well,
so
interestingly enough, I haven't done my taxes in a while, but when I filed for EI,
it's different.
yeah,
That's exactly what I ended up doing, too.
automatically, because then I got a letter from the CRA a few days later with my login information and my account number.
Yes. So this is the big difference, though, is because you applied for the Canadian Response Benefit via EI through that avenue.
I only applied for EI. I didn't even apply for CERB.
Right. But it gets shifted over or whatever it does, whatever threshold you're at.
Basically.
Right. So you essentially end up with a response benefit via EI. So even if you didn't do your taxes, it doesn't matter. You were a full-time employed. To anybody who was full-time employed and got laid off, to be honest, that it's way better situation than the freelancers.
Yeah.
No, I completely agree. And so just wanted to put a quick word in here, Will. We're kind of just going to go through some of the other questions that we've already gone through on the show here with Matt since he's joined us. So don't feel that you need to stay if you do need to go. I see that you're in your car, but we're just going to get a few more questions here with Matt since he wasn't able to join us.
He's not driving. He's just sitting in his driveway, I bet.
That's called
I can see
that is called an isolation booth.
Yeah,
it's
right. There
isolations.
you go. There you
It is
go.
so chaotic in my house right now that I had to just come outside and do this.
had to get away
Oh,
from the
I
kids.
understand.
Huh?
And thank you so much for doing that, Will. We appreciate it. Okay, well, you're more than welcome to stay, but like I said, if you do have to go get going, we understand.
To be honest, I'm looking at Kevin over there, and I think he's missing like a stogie and a brandy. It's got
Well,
the leather couch,
I
the
was
lamp.
going for the masterpiece theater look. The topic was going earlier. It could just be just that sit back and just kind of just fucking ride this out.
Yeah, you definitely have the coziest set of all of us.
Yeah.
Right now.
Yeah, well, this is why
I'm working back here. Look at this.
This is why I have no new hobbies, because I can just.
But you're right. Your lighting sucks.
Lighting. I told you that. I'm terrible.
Yeah, you weren't lying, because that light right next to your head is blowing out half your face.
On that.
Well, hey, like Kevin mentioned, he was never a lighting tech.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I was just confirming that.
And while we're on that, I'm going to tell just a quick little story with Kevin.
Oh, shit.
We had many years ago.
Yeah, I can't imagine what story it is actually.
Oh,
this is good, because I'm planning to make a segment for. I'm planning a segment for this channel just called "Story of the Day."
Oh my God, me and Steve can tell you countless ones of me and him fighting and bickering and yelling at each other.
Yeah, so we might actually, if it's
and that's when we were
cut the segment out of the show and use it for that one, just so you're aware of it.
Yep. And Matt, that doesn't even include the times when we're actually working together.
Yeah, right.
anyways,
like I've been stranded on a highway with Steve. I've watched him destroy a board. It's man. Let's just
see, wait till we do some live shows doing shop talk like that, and just swapping old road stories, because that would make a pretty awesome show, I think.
No one would believe it. That's the problem.
Well, that's the beauty of it, though.
So anyways,
you can actually speak the truth, because nobody would believe you anyway.
My story with Kevin was we're on a setup somewhere, and he was setting up a light with a gobo or something like that. And he's like, I can't get this goddamn thing to look straight or anything like that. And I said, why don't you just turn the barrel? He said, oh yeah, it's just that fucking easy to just turn the barrel. Sure, Steve, whatever. And then I went up and I did, and even then he saw what I did, and he was just like, fuck off.
Yeah, well, fuck. Yeah,
it's like, yep. But the amount of times I've seen other people do that to me on something so simple, and you're just kicking yourself because you're just so angry that it was that simple.
And again, it's a thing you fall for once. I'll let you know. No one has told me that again. That was the one time.
Hey, that's you know what? That's the important part. As long as you heard it, you got it once.
Oh, then, I learned through pain and injury. I've done it my whole life. Oh yes.
True enough. So just to get back on point here, Matt, question for you. Other than online conferences, do you know of anybody else in the industry that's actually currently working right now? And if yes, what are they doing?
Yeah, I mean, there was one or two technicians who I got connected with some hospitals, and they're doing door screening, and they're working kind of screening patients and visitors on the way in and out of hospitals. I know there's a few technicians that are doing food delivery and Uber driving, like myself. I'm currently doing DoorDash food delivery. I think that's the only ones I can think of off the top of my head. So, there was a whole group of technicians, and I'm not going to mention who for reasons, but they were making hand sanitizer.
I was hoping you were going to bring this up.
Yeah, they were making hand sanitizer, and I mean, the safety was a little lax. This hand sanitizer was fantastic. I've got a bottle of it here. It's strong. Oh boy. But yeah, I got invited down, went down there, worked a day of filling bottles of hand sanitizer, got high on some alcohol fumes, and oh boy, I don't know how those guys are doing it. They were running something like 14 technicians were splitting 24 hours of shifts. And everybody was AV related. Everybody. And the reason they hired AV people, and they actually paid pretty well. They paid like $20 to $25 an hour. The reason they hired AV people is available labor pool was one, and labor pool that can figure shit out. Because let's face it, we are the ultimate troubleshooters. Yeah, problem solving skills every time. And good example is we only had 2 pumps on site for pumping into the bottles. Well, the pump failed. So what do? Okay, let's take 1,000 liters of, we have a vat, 1,000 liters of hand sanitizer. All right, on a skid, on a forklift, raise it up in the air. Oh, look at that, water pressure. Now, was it strapped down to the skid? No. Was it strapped down to the forks? No. Was it safe? Questionable. Did we get the job done? Yes. You know, we got the job done. We did it safely. We did it safe, in a way that we were comfortable with it anyway. And we all went home at the end of the day with some money. I didn't go back, but that's okay. I'm okay with not going back. But man, you know what? Those guys and girls who were there, filling those bottles, everything from 1 liters to like little tiny things like that. It's tough. It's tough. But it was working out though.
Matt, let me ask you this, since you are working at different jobs and stuff like that. What are your thoughts of, as far as we kind of talked earlier on the show about maximum risk of exposure to the virus versus working a minimum wage job and whether it's worth it or not. Now, obviously, you're out there every day, like you mentioned, delivering food for an online service. What are your thoughts on that? Like, are you doing that mostly to keep your boredom away, or are you doing it because it's a financial must for you?
Realistically, I sat down with my partner and it's not a financial must. We sat down. My other half is work from home. And actually the reason I was late today was because I had to get her stuff out of the way and set my stuff up. We only have one desk. She's work from home, and between her income, which her boss has said is not going away, which is fantastic, and the CERB benefit, I technically could sit and play PlayStation, but I would go stir crazy. I don't mind driving a vehicle around the city. I think that now that I can make up to, definitely, it's been okay that I can make up to $1,000 extra on top of the benefit. I'm okay with that. And I feel like delivering food keeps me at minimal risk. I have my own, because I have a medical background as an EMT, I understand infection control. So I do have my own kind of self-imposed protocols for what happens when I come into my apartment, what happens when I leave my apartment, what happens when I pick up food, when I get in my car, how much sanitizer I use, when I use it, so on and so on. And anybody who I drop food off to right now, currently, I do contactless drops, which means I walk up to your door, I put it on, I take a picture, so that way if you try to say I didn't deliver it, I got you. I knock on your door, and then I walk towards my car. Now, usually I sit in my car for a second, wait to see them grab it and say, have a good night and see you later. And most people understand what's happening. Most people get it.
Is there any sort of essential job that's happening right now that you wouldn't put yourself in the same position as far as willing to help out? You mentioned that you've got EMT background, and obviously we know that there's been a lot of talk about protective equipment for the doctors and the nurses that are running the hospitals right now, and that it's been a real challenge both in Canada and the US. Is that something that you would ever put yourself in a position of?
Yeah, I mean, my mother's a nurse. She works at Sunnybrook. She's been a nurse for 30 plus years. And actually, funny enough, I was concerned for my mother. Actually, even I'm less concerned about myself if I had to be put in that position. If I had to be called in to do something, I would be okay. I've dealt with highly infectious patients before. The tough thing about the current situation is you don't know. So when you're dealing with patients, you want to be careful, obviously not to infect yourself, but at the same time, when someone comes up to you, like Steve, if you just have a cough and I approach you with gown, gloves, mask, face shield, it's intimidating.
Oh, of course. Right? As far as the visual, the person in that kind of jumpsuit coming towards you.
Right.
Absolutely. I can't imagine what the bedside manner of things have changed within that industry alone.
Exactly. So it's really difficult. It's really difficult for someone like myself who, like, I'm used to dealing with trauma patients and dealing with that kind of stuff. I've done it before. I've done it on AV sites. But it's different when you have to assume everybody has an infectious disease. When I've dealt with people who we knew had something, when I did patient transfers and I did hospital type stuff, we go into a room and we knew already, because we had a chart on that person. They have this. You need to wear this to protect yourself. Now you don't know, and there have been a couple times when delivering food, and actually more specifically picking up the deliveries. I have canceled 2 pickups, and that was because I felt it was unsafe for me to enter the restaurant. There was a fish restaurant on Easter Friday, which I'm Jewish, so I don't know. Apparently you eat fish on Friday for Easter. That's a thing.
First I've heard of it, but okay.
Yeah,
Sure.
I've heard of that before.
Thing?
I think it's a Catholic thing.
That is
Sure.
a Catholic thing. My grandma did the same thing.
Yeah, there you go. So there was a fish restaurant that had probably about 40 couriers trying to do pickups at the same time. And I actually contacted DoorDash on my app, because if I just hit unassign, then someone else gets reassigned to it, which is not safe. But also, they don't know why I'm unassigning it, and then my rating drops. And the rating system within these delivery apps is important. So I actually hopped on my thing. I said, this is an unsafe pickup. No one should be here. No one should be doing this. And DoorDash said, yep, not a problem. We'll pay you half of the delivery fee. Take off. Go grab another delivery somewhere else.
Wow, that's interesting to hear, because we hear all the time with all these online services that they don't really ethically treat their employees very well, considering you're not really viewed as an employee, but kind of self-employed from that kind of point of view. So it's nice to hear that somebody is taking an ethical stand when it comes to something like that.
Well, the question is, are they just reassigning the job to another person, or are they actually going to reprimand the restaurant?
Well, here's the thing. I can flat out tell you that I called 311 and said, you better send bylaw by there, because
yes,
and Toronto's pretty good about that, because I was like, this is not okay. This is and there is. I'm not agoraphobic, but there have been a couple times within the last month where I've just been like, I don't want to be here in this situation, because I don't know. It's a safety aspect, and I don't know who might have something.
So just to clarify a couple things here, especially for Will, who's American, 311 is the kind of the service number that we call for bylaw infractions and stuff. And they have been ticketing here in Ontario as far as not social distancing properly, or for if you happen to have a large party in your backyard or anything like that. Now, I can't say that on the American side that I've really heard much about that. What kind of steps are being taken right now to enforce any sort of social distancing in the state of California that you know of?
Just a general recommendation, just stay 6 feet apart. And certain counties have issued mask orders. So if you go out in public or go to the store, you have to wear a mask. And my county is one of them here in San Bernardino. And so a lot of times it's hard to get masks out here, because either one, there's just no inventory, or two, if there is, they're just overpriced. And so they've allowed us to make our own, which I made this one. And so every time I go to the store, go to the gas station, or go to a restaurant to pick up food or something like that, I have to wear that.
I did wear, what's funny? I have a full face P100 respirator, which is gonna kick the butt off of any N95 mask. But I wore it once to shop, and it was only in the Costco veggie aisle, because no one would give me friggin' space. Man, as soon as you put on a full face respirator that covers your entire face, and you have the big chemical cans on it, everybody clears the hell out of your way.
Yeah,
every time.
The hockey mask and a chainsaw does the same thing.
Like the Darth Vader mask work too, because I could get one of those.
Which one?
A Darth Vader mask or something, maybe like a Boba Fett. That's
yeah, right.
That could work, sure.
Michael Myers mask would work too, I'm sure. Yep.
I think somewhere I have a mask of Steve I can just put on, and then I can just.
God, can I people shielding their kids? Oh.
Yeah, exactly. That's just not fair to anyone. So, Maddie, I got one more question for you here. We were talking about sanitation as far as how things are going to change within the industry, and this is something that we talked about earlier with you, just in a private conversation. And what was kind of brought up was whose responsibility is it going to be as far as how it gets sanitized from a cross rental company to the return of it. And it seemed like the consensus mostly within the group was that it was kind of a combination of both, that it needs to be sanitized when a piece of equipment gets on site, but when you're in the middle of a show or something like that, that we're going to have to sanitize in between, which led us kind of down an interesting path as far as some of the equipment that transfers between presenters a lot, not just microphones, but we're talking about, clickers, laser pointers, all that kind of stuff, to the point where our producer here, Chris Mills, had an excellent idea about, the kind of foot pedal option of rigging up something to advance slides versus having to do something like next slide or anything like that. What are your thoughts as far as what we need to do moving forward in the industry as far as sanitation? Where do you land on the issue of cross rental equipment?
Well,
As far as that's concerned.
Well, okay. So first of all, it's in the end, it's everybody's responsibility. Realistically, it's everybody's responsibility. If we all hate somebody on stage going, next slide, please, next slide. No, not that. Nope, click that one. Especially they got something with 75 different builds in it. Just great. I think this will blow over a little bit. There will be a certain amount of microphones, microphone capsules being cleaned, microphone handhelds being cleaned, cables and stuff that go inside people's clothing, that kind of stuff. Yeah. I mean, once Lysol wipes are more available and we can actually buy them again, then it'll be something that will just be A2s will just have now. They'll just have them on site.
Yeah, it'll be standard procedure, basically.
Standard procedure. It'll be in the work box, backstage. It'll be in a backstage kit. It'll be in a work box. It'll be, I know, it'll be in my kit going forward from now on.
One of the things that was brought up about that, since you mentioned the A2, is that position is going to be something that will probably be increased as a result of this, having to sanitize between presentations when there's no coffee break or lunch break.
Yeah, I mean, you know what? Welcome to the job. That's you know what? If someone wants to give me shit for that, I'm fine. I come from corporate. That's part of the gig. That's a customer service thing. I'm fine with it. Whatever. I come
from rock and roll. Those pansies should suck it up.
There you go. That's just it. It's it's fine. Whatever. We got to clean them between people. It's not the end of the world. Or to be honest, what it means from an AV rental standpoint, it means instead of renting 4 mics for 8 presenters, we now have 8 mics for 8 presenters. So nobody has to share anything, which, hey, extra rental. All right. Because let's face it, nobody's giving you a deal.
No, I think that when it comes down to it, for certain things like this, for the next little while anyways, the overall cost of things is going to go up as far as that's concerned, to making sure that there is no spread of any sort of disease or anything like that until, a vaccine is really readily available. But certain things obviously will not. I mean, I don't really see a huge uptick as far as say for lighting or anything like that, because it's not something that the client really has any specific contact with. But one thing that was brought up to us as something that was asked, Will and I were on a show in San Diego together about a month ago, and one of the questions that the client asked was, are you sanitizing the keyboards every day? And it's like, well,
rental laptops.
Once again, even if you are doing that, you would still be required to do it between each user.
So
not just daily, because what does it really do daily?
Correct. So there's, okay. So let's take at a conference, let's take a registration station, 12 laptops, 12 printers, self-registration type station. Because I know me and Steve have done those a billion times. You take something like that, and whoever, if the client wants to be that concerned about it, they were cleaned when they're dropped off. If you want us to man it, then it would be up to us as the technicians. Yep, okay, we can man it, not a problem. We'll clean it between every user. That's why we're there. Welcome to corporate. If they are manning it and it's their people, then it's their responsibility if they want that done.
Yeah,
I think it depends on who's running that station.
I think that brings up an interesting point though as well, as far as the responsibility of it, and should it ever come down to a legal situation, who would be the people that would get sued in a situation like that?
The person who would
it's something that we would see probably more in the American culture than we would in the Canadian culture, based on what we see. And at least in my experience, I've always found that usually the buck stops with the AV company versus the client itself. So your thoughts on that?
Well, so it's going to come down to who has a better lawyer. And realistically, or who wants to say, I have been named in lawsuits before. It's not fun. And honestly, what is that?
That's my cat. Sorry. Hey, shut up.
Turtles are quiet. I'm just saying. He doesn't.
Yeah. I know.
So, okay. So
you can't hear me anyways.
Yeah, I'll restart that for you, Chris.
Okay, thanks.
So realistically, it comes down to whoever has the better lawyer. Realistically, it's gonna be, it's hard to say. Like, yeah, most of the time the buck stops at the AV company. I mean, it's never the venue's fault because the venue has their cleaning crews and they're doing the best they can. But realistically, it's not gonna. I can't see someone being sued for not cleaning a keyboard. I mean, if somebody was crazy enough to run a conference right now and then someone could prove that it came off a keyboard and whatnot, then that's different. But again, that comes down to the lawyer or whoever is bringing forth the evidence to try to prove that type of stuff. It's not likely to happen, I think, but I'm also not a legal expert.
Of course. And, once again, it's a lot to consider as far as that's concerned. And I think that some things will certainly change within the live event industry when it comes to corporate conferences, such as certificates for insurance that a lot of AV companies do have to submit before even entering a venue.
Yep.
We see that more down in the US than we do in Canada. That is something that might very well change, but also the requirements of insurance will probably change as well. Based on what we're currently seeing. So, I mean, what can I say? It's the whole situation is an onion that you just keep peeling back more and more layers, and you just keep coming up with more and more questions. I, for one, am very, very interested to see where things are going to go from here on out.
I love the audience member in the background.
Oh, yeah, right? God, yeah, I know.
If only you had some kind of dynamic mic that could get rid of that.
Yeah, well, I'm talking on an SM58 or whatever.
Oh, okay. That's not bad.
So it's not that bad, but
right,
of course, I am actually though a little bit ways back from the microphone because we all know that a 58 doesn't really pick up that much, but at the same time, that's all I really had available. So
hey, I'm on a 58 as well. My fancy podcaster is still in the mail.
This is the
capture card. That's why I got this crappy webcam going. Yeah, that's the one.
That's the podcaster. Yep.
Yeah, the Rode podcaster. I'm waiting
for by the way, Chris, speaking of that, generic, I think it's like a Yorkville mic cover.
Yeah.
Or like a 58 mic cover, really helps. It has a built-in pop filter, but it's crap. So mind you, if you have your little, I see you have a mesh one. So I mean, that'll work too.
I've got my little one, but I also still have a generic pop filter from my wireless 58.
Yep, that'll do it. Yeah. They're just, it has a built-in one, but it's crap. So.
Actually, I have no idea. How's mine? I'm on an SM93.
You sound actually pretty good. Slightly hollow, but pretty decent.
All right.
But considering how far away you're sitting from the camera, and that's something that I noticed, right? You're a good ways away. So it's picking you up quite well.
Which, by the way,
is better too now, Kevin, by the way, since you moved that light out of the way.
Is it really?
Yes,
it is. It is actually.
We saw you playing with it actually as we were talking about your lighting story.
Yeah, speaking of that, don't judge me on my lighting. I only have one light set up. It's right over here. You can see the shadow.
That's typical of any lighting focus for corporate that Matt Cohen does.
Oh, yeah,
Thank you very much, Matt, and have a great day.
I already claimed to never be a lighting person, ever.
Well, it's only fair that I have the worst video quality being the senior video engineer here.
Right?
Well, guys, I want to thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate you. I know that sure we're not the busiest at the moment, but even still, just taking the time to talk with us today has been really fantastic to kick things off. So we're just going to sign off here. That's all we really got for today's episode. You can watch this episode on our YouTube channel or on our website, www.grumpyroadie.com. Also, check out our Facebook page for more info on new episodes, question polls, and other industry news. For Grumpy Roadie, this is Steve Klinck saying, remember to dust off those dead man shoes, get some exercise to beat those isolation blues. See you next time.